In a tense and commanding congressional showdown, Representative Grace Meng dismantles Pam Bondi's defenses, exposing deep failures inside the DOJ and demanding real accountability in one of the hearings' most explosive moments.
Tens of thousands of public servants at the Department of Justice and its bureaus have historically worked very hard and continue to work hard to protect public safety and uphold the rule of law in our country. Yet, I must take this opportunity to express my very strong concerns about this current administration's lack of respect for the rule of law. Over the past 5 months, we have seen numerous examples of this administration outright breaking the law. The administration continues to illegally withhold billions of dollars in funding that Congress appropriated, including hundreds of recently terminated justice grants that had previously been awarded through open and competitive processes. The administration is violating the federal law that mandates that the Office of Management and Budget publish apportionments and show the public how and when federal agencies are spending appropriated funds. The Justice Department has begun illegally restoring the gun possession rights of convicted felons and domestic abusers. It's allowing the sale of forced reset trigger devices without a background check. These are devices that effectively convert regular firearms into machine guns, which I fear will only make mass shootings in the United States more numerous and deadly. More than 1,500 individuals involved in the January 6th attack on the Capitol were pardoned or granted commutations of sentences. The president's new appointee as pardon attorney, Ed Martin, previously raised money to help defend some of the most violent of these individuals, people who assaulted police officers. Some of the pardoned January 6 defendants have subsequently been arrested, charged, or sentenced for other crimes. Under this president, the U.S. has accepted a luxury jetliner from Qatar, very likely in violation of the emoluments clause of the Constitution. This president has also issued a series of illegal and unconstitutional executive orders, several of which are being challenged in courts right now. Presidential actions in recent months have also directed highly political and targeted investigations against law firms and individuals, including Miles Taylor, a former staffer for the House Appropriation Committee's Republican majority. Meanwhile, the administration has weakened law enforcement against political corruption by gutting the department's public integrity section, which fairly investigates and prosecutes corruption by government officials. It has dismantled Task Force Kleptocapture, which was started after Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine, to enforce sanctions and target oligarchs close to the Kremlin. It has also ended the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force, which was created to defend against foreign influence operations targeting U.S. institutions. Furthermore, dozens of experienced career federal prosecutors, litigators, and FBI leaders have been fired or forced out since the start of this administration, including James Dennehy, the highly respected leader of the FBI's New York field office. I'm really concerned about what is happening in the Department of Justice, especially based on the department's fiscal year 2026 budget request. The proposed budget weakens the country's efforts to fight crime and keep Americans safe. The proposal reduces funding for the FBI, despite the heroism of agents like those in Minnesota who aided in the recent capture of the deranged man accused of killing a state representative and nearly killing another. It slashes funding to fight the trafficking of fentanyl and other dangerous illegal drugs by reducing the budget of the DEA, cutting the high-intensity drug trafficking areas program by more than a third, and by completely eliminating the dedicated funding for the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force's program. The administration also proposes a cut of more than 25% to the ATF, which will further weaken the government's ability to fight illegal gun trafficking. This budget proposal also puts further pressure on state and local budgets at a time of great economic uncertainty. The proposal cuts by more than $800 million funding to grants to local and state law enforcement for fighting and reducing crime, including a cut of more than $37 million to burn justice assistance formula grants that help our local law enforcement in every single state. I'm also concerned about the huge cuts to grants aimed at preventing and prosecuting violence against women, such as STOP grants and sexual assault services grants. The administration also proposes eliminating 3 valuable programs aimed at fighting and preventing hate crimes at the same time that the FBI is reporting that hate crimes are at historic highs. The administration's budget would completely eliminate the Community Relations Service, which was created by the Civil Rights Act.
In today's explosive hearing on Capitol Hill, Congresswoman Grace Meng delivered one of the most pointed, controlled, and devastating takedowns of the Department of Justice under Pam Bondi's leadership, laying bare a catalog of failures, contradictions, and unanswered questions that have shaken confidence in the department's credibility. From the moment Meng began her line of questioning, it was clear she had come armed with facts, documents, and a determination to get real answers from an official who has repeatedly deflected responsibility. She started by outlining a troubling pattern inside the DOJ cases: delayed, oversight ignored, and transparency routinely sidestepped, setting the stage for what would become a meticulous dismantling of Bondi's version of events. Meng highlighted reports showing DOJ staff warnings that went unaddressed, whistleblowers whose testimonies contradicted Bondi's public statements, and internal memos that suggested critical decisions were influenced more by political pressure than legal standards. As Bondi attempted to dodge, pivot, and blur timelines, Meng pressed harder, refusing to accept vague answers or rehearsed talking points. She demanded specificity: who signed off on disputed actions, why certain investigations were slowed, why documented concerns from career officials were dismissed, and why the DOJ repeatedly failed to comply with court-ordered deadlines. Every time Bondi tried to shift blame onto subordinates, Meng countered with dates, emails, and sworn statements, illustrating a pattern of avoidance rather than accountability. At one point, Meng underscored the gravity of the moment by reminding Bondi that public trust in the DOJ is not an abstract concept, it is the foundation of the rule of law, and that when leaders mislead Congress or obscure information, they undermine the very institution they are sworn to protect. Viewers could see Bondi struggling to maintain composure as Meng walked through example after example where DOJ actions contradicted Bondi's testimony, including mishandled case files, questionable intervention in ongoing investigations, and a highly contested decision that multiple legal experts have labeled a procedural failure with political fingerprints. Meng's questioning crescendoed when she confronted Bondi with a documented timeline that directly conflicted with her sworn claims. When Bondi tried yet again to clarify, Meng cut in sharply, reminding her that clarifying after being confronted with evidence is not the same as telling the truth from the start. The tension in the room became palpable, as even other members glanced at one another in recognition that this was not a typical oversight exchange. This was a public unmasking of systemic dysfunction and leadership breakdown. Meng then broadened her critique, noting that these failures are not isolated, they represent a structural issue within the DOJ under Bondi's direction, impacting courtroom outcomes, victims seeking justice, and national-level investigations that depend on procedural integrity. She emphasized that the American people deserve a justice department that functions without fear or bias, and that Bondi's attempts to minimize these failures only deepen public concern. As her final line of questioning landed, Meng delivered a statement that has already begun to go viral. Accountability is not optional, not for staff, not for attorneys, not for you. It was the type of moment that stops a hearing cold, direct, forceful, and impossible to misinterpret. Bondi offered no meaningful rebuttal, only another attempt at reframing, which Meng dismissed by simply pointing back to the documented record. By the time her allotted time expired, Meng had constructed a vivid image of a justice department stumbling under the weight of mismanagement, conflicting statements, and leaders unwilling to admit mistakes. And that is why this exchange is resonating far beyond Washington. It captures the collision between truth and spin, between documented reality and political narrative, between elected oversight and executive resistance. For millions watching, Grace Meng didn't just expose failures. Within the DOJ, she illuminated the importance of relentless questioning, factual grounding, and public accountability, showing once again why congressional oversight matters and why leaders who try to hide behind evasive answers eventually run out of room. This was not just a hearing, it was a warning. The era of dodging responsibility is over, and the public deserves and demands the truth.